What's going on, everyone? It's your girl, Rebecca Ruber here, and today on the show, we have Jaclyn Sklaver. She's a sports nutritionist who works with the world's top professional athletes, including the former world heavyweight champion, Deontay himself. Her goal is to optimize performance, body composition, and metabolic health. And according to her website, which you can check out, her practice, Athleats Nutrition, it's operated with a combined philosophy of both performance nutrition and functional medicine. Her philosophy is that each individual requires their own tailored plan and approach. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jaclyn, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
So I was thinking of how I can start this interview because there's so many different avenues we can go, but I want to start with you from the very, very beginnings. When did you start your health journey, fitness journey? Have you always been an athlete?
Always. I mean, and when it comes to nutrition, I say like I was in 5th grade knowing that I was very particular about my food. I wouldn't eat the school lunches. I was packing my own foods. This is something that started at such a young age and it just kept manifesting and growing. I played sports like 8 years old. I was playing basketball in rec council, played sports in middle school, high school. But I also was really into my food then. And I was really into what I was bringing in to eat. And then also where I grew up and like back in the day, women didn't go into the weight room. So after sports, I would have my dad drop me off at the local gym and I would lift weights because I wanted to lift weights. So it's always been such a big part of my life. And with that, I started to care about how can I build more muscle? How can I get in shape more? How can I be more athletic? And I started just studying nutrition on my own in a different sense. And back then it was the low fat, high carb craze. You know, everybody was eating bagels with low fat everything. And then, you know, honestly, as an undergraduate in college, I was very intimidated by the sciences. So I started to study it and I went on a different route. And then it was still something I always wanted to do. So in my 30s, I decided to go back to grad school to get my degree in nutrition.
Wow. So it wasn't like right after you got your undergrad, you went right in, you took some time.
I worked in like marketing and PR, but I was still always working with like sports companies or startups in fitness. And it was still always on the edge of that. And that's what I like to do. So I was living in New York City and I decided, you know what, I'm going to literally leave my corporate job, get my personal training license and go back to school. And that wasn't an easy path. You know, you sacrifice a lot at that. It's a lot of questioning and insecurities and like, how am I going to pay my bills in New York City? Mm-hmm. But it was worth it in the end. It definitely was worth it in the end.
Well, I definitely have a younger demographic, a lot of people that are currently in school. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays are becoming more health conscious. They're becoming more aware of what they put into their body. A lot of people are now studying exercise science, nutritional science, so on and so forth, learning about how to work with our bodies and be the most efficient that we can. What's your advice to those getting started in this field and how to start making professional connections to get to where you are? Because you're a very successful woman in this industry.
You hit the nail on the head. It's really about connections and networking and joining organizations and groups. So if it's the NSCA, which is, you know, National Strength and Conditioning, or whatever organization, I did ISSN, you know, sports nutrition, going to those events, going out of your way, being uncomfortable. You know, I would show up, I didn't know anybody there. I would save up so I could go to the conferences once a year, wherever it may be. I try to go to local conferences and I just show up. I mean, I love to learn. So that was part of it. You get to learn so much at these conferences, but you get to meet people and you get to meet people from all over the country. And those relationships that you start to build are what's going to decide where you're going from there, especially if you're looking for an internship, right? Which is really in strength, in exercise science and in nutrition, your internship years are really what's going to help build your career. So I think it's a lot of networking and putting yourself out there. And I always tell people, try to differentiate yourself. I mean, if you have 30 classmates and you're all studying, say, physical therapy or something, you know, or strength and conditioning, what can you do that might make your classmate need you later on down the road where they can refer somebody to you? Because my business really started on referrals in New York City. Because I was a personal trainer, but I was so focused on nutrition, all the top trainers knew if they had a client who needed nutrition, they could send them to me. And that's really how I got my basis and how I started. And getting that trust of your colleagues and coworkers and people that are almost your competition, then that sets you apart and then they can send people to you. So that's the best way to really get it rolling, you know? So figure out like, what's your niche?
Mm-hmm. I feel like people think that everything is such a competition, where there is to a certain extent, but there's enough there's enough room to eat for everybody, right? And so
Everybody,
I
yes.
think it's
And,
really,
but also you do need to make yourself unique, you know, and I think that there's so much room for women too. I have to say that there is a need, there's room for women and a need for women in strength and conditioning and in nutrition. You know, there's so much space for us there. And I think that's one of the things when I see a lot of interns that come through that are like graduate students in strength and conditioning, it's always, you know, 5 guys and maybe 1 woman, you know, and that's it. So there's so much room for women because we need it. We need it. Women can work with men and with women. And I'm not saying that men can't, but there's definitely a need for more women. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that are studying it, but you could definitely find a way to set yourself apart for sure.
was there a moment in either while you were working in marketing, PR, or while you were in your undergrad, or maybe while you were in your graduate program, where you realized that this was what you were meant to do?
I think the entire time, to be honest with you, I would kind of take side projects. I started doing these like networking events in New York City that would get fitness people together. I called it the Fit Circuit because I didn't want to go to bars and how do you meet people? So I held one in like the Reebok CrossFit, Reebok Fit Hub or in Lululemon, and I'd have a DJ and different tables. And it's like how to get people in the fitness industry together. And that is what made me thrive. Like I love doing that. And so I always wanted to be focused in that area. So I think it was just, eventually I'm like, I have to stop making pretend I want to do something else. This is what I want to do and I want to help people. And this is what I love to do.
Well, I think that was a great segue into the next thing I want to talk about, because this is a boxing podcast. We're talking about making connections. And I mean, for example, we got connected through a mutual friend, Baz, who told me a lot about you, your amazing work, and how you've worked with former heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder. More specifically, you worked with him to get him in fight shape for his last fight, the trilogy of Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. And I wanted to talk to you. I was really excited to get you on for the show because I remember watching his weigh-ins, his last weigh-ins, and I looked at him and I said, holy shit, he looks awesome. I mean, he always looks amazing, but this time around, there was just something different about him. And a lot of people had the same thing to say like I did. So first and foremost, how did you first get introduced to Deontay Wilder, and how has your relationship grown with him since?
I work with the doctor, Dr. Elamine, and he's a sports medicine doctor based out of Atlanta, who I met when I went down there my first internship years. And he was one of the first people I actually met in Atlanta, like 6 years ago. And he watched me grow in my career and me get my degree and everything like that. And he started working with Deontay, I think, after his second fight. And when time was coming back around for this third fight, which initially, as you know, we thought was going to be the fall of last year and all that stuff with COVID and all that. So that's when I was brought into the picture because, you know, they were like, we need to put some weight on it. And Doc was like, I got the person for that. And initially it was really just, we need to put weight on him. And then when I came into the camp, I really educated them and brought to the table more than just weight. You know, I kept saying, it's not just about weight. This is about energy systems. This is about output. This is about training, recovery, you know, and it's really part of recovery, not just weight. So Doc brought me onto the team. I had initially met him last fall. And then I think it was March of this year, or maybe it was February, I got the call. It's like, it's go time, you know, we're having the fight. And so what I would do is I would fly from Miami to Atlanta on Sunday morning, drive 3.5 hours out to Tuscaloosa. We spend the day with him doing recovery, nutrition, meeting with the team, meeting with his aunt is the chef. And then we drive back to Atlanta every week. So yeah, but it was good because, you know, a lot of Deontay is very based in his team and being like family. You know, he really is. And he says it and it's 100% true. You know, you're not just going into work every day. You're not just going in to see different people and different trainers and different coaches. Everybody genuinely becomes like a part of a family together, you know? And so it was great to have that time every week with them.
Well, looking at Wilder, he went from being about 213 pounds, then he went to like 231, and then I think he ended up being like around 237. So yeah, what was the biggest challenge getting him to that weight in a healthy and efficient way?
So Deontay doesn't love to eat, and that's very common actually with a lot of my athletes that are my faster athletes, my quick muscle fiber athletes, people that my fastest athletes and my most athletic athletes don't like to eat. It's very common. And so when you have somebody who doesn't love to eat, now you're like, oh, well, you have to eat around the clock and your output is so high. You're in the summer heat in Alabama. How are we going to get all this food into your system? So luckily, he's also a very elite athlete. So having him eat, he builds muscle very quickly. And even at his age, he's 36 years old. You hear all these things, oh, you stop building muscle after a certain time. These elite athletes break all the rules. So everything you learn in school goes out the door when you start working with athletes. So a lot of it was figuring out, how much food does he need to sustain his training? How are we going to make it that even though he doesn't like eating, how's it going to make it feel like he's not eating 24/7? Although he would probably tell you that he felt like he was eating 24/7. And then also around his training, because when you're training 3-4 hours a day, 3 different times a day, how are you going to get this food in and then also have him be able to train? So I kind of map all of that out and figure it out, work with him, work with his coaches, work with his chef, and we make it, a lot of feedback, a lot of communication, make it all happen. And I think in the beginning, we had like a quick jump up. We may have put like 10 pounds on. I have it all on my spreadsheet. We may have put 10 pounds on, but then we kind of plateaued a little bit. So then we had to put a little bit more, and then training changes too. So we just have to periodize around the training as well.
Do you feel like a big factor in a successful diet nutrition journey is trial and error?
It depends. I think it's a lot more feedback because listen, there is a hard science to it. So I have a formula to go off of, but now I'm dealing with human beings, and that's where I have to really mold things and change it. So it's really having somebody who is willing to do it, and Deontay will do whatever it takes. He is the ultimate athlete and the ultimate client because of that. Even if he doesn't want to be eating all that food, he's going to get it done. So there's the willingness, but then, like I said, also the feedback. How are you feeling? You really didn't like that. Why didn't you like it? Being able to change the foods around, make things more palatable. So I think trial and error is a little less, but it's more of like human trial and error, more of like emotional trial and error than science trial and error.
Interesting. Yeah. Not only, actually, before I get into that question, a lot of fighters now have been changing to more plant-based vegan diets. What are your thoughts on boxers going vegan right before a fight? Do you believe it can be done efficiently, or do you believe there needs to be meat in those diets?
So done correctly, I mean, listen, the thing with being plant-based is you have to eat so much more food to get in your protein. Now, when you're a fighter, you get to have a ton of carbohydrates anyway. So we can really make that work. So for your general population, it's a lot harder, but someone who's a fighter, listen, we can actually get in enough protein if we're doing it correctly, and I unfortunately see a lot of people not doing it correctly. Now, the problem is it's really hard to keep weight on without meat. I mean, that's one of my tricks is red meat. That really helps keep weight on athletes. So once we start taking out those red meats, because they have those saturated fats and animal fats, now it's a little bit harder to keep weight on, and we see people drop weight. And I think that's also why you'll hear some fighters like UFC fighters that they want to go plant-based because they think that they're going to drop weight to make weight. And it doesn't always work that way. It's correlation, so not causation. So it just depends, but I think that you have to do it correctly. That's the bottom line. Do I recommend it? No, I never recommend that someone's plant-based. Can I support it if that's what somebody wants to do? Absolutely, because that's what they want to do. And you can't go. What I like to try to do with people is, and this is almost always how it happens, we'll do it for like a month, maybe 6 weeks, and then they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. and even with my NFL players, same thing. The NFL players won't even last that long. They'll last because they'll start dropping weight really fast. They'll do it for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they're like, nope, I'm done with this.
And by losing a lot of weight, like what type of numbers are we talking usually for specifically NFL players?
Well, it depends. Like, so if I usually work with a lineman, right? Because the linemen are the ones who have to keep the weight on. So if I've got a 320-pound lineman and he's starting to lose, he's going in every week and he's losing sometimes it could be 5 pounds, but he comes in next week and he's 10 pounds under. That's going to affect him on the line because he has to hold off 2 offensive linemen. And the team RDs don't want to see that either. So he can drop weight really quickly, especially if somebody was eating a ton of meat to begin with. So if you were eating a lot of meats and maybe they were higher calorie meats, at the end of the day, the reason why you lose weight is calories, right? So if you're taking that big chunk of calories out, and maybe that was 1,000 calories a day, and that's 7 days of the week. That's 2 pounds a week right there, you know?
Are there any specific red meats that you prefer that your fighters eat, or is it just red meats across the board?
I personally love bison because it's a lower saturated fat meat. You're still getting in all the iron, getting on the zinc, all the protein, everything like that. But I'm not, I let them kind of choose. I definitely want to choose lower fat meats in the sense that I don't want to be doing prime rib, things like that. We do think about the overall health of the athlete and what they're eating, and we want to keep foods lower inflammatory. I also, generally speaking, wouldn't want someone to be eating red meat every single day if we can avoid that. But yeah, that's pretty much, like I said, personally, I love to do bison and mix that in. Beef. One of my NBA players loves lamb. He eats that a lot. Lamb does have a higher fat content in it, but he's a metabolic machine, so he can do it.
Now, these elite athletes that you work with, I have to ask, and I think a bunch of people will probably be asking the same thing. Do they have cheat days, or how does that work? How do they balance having a healthy lifestyle, but also getting to live a little bit as well?
So it really depends, because when we think about cheat days, like for us, because they get to eat so many calories, right? So like when I personally think about a cheat day, I just want to eat more calories and maybe have like some cheese and pasta and wine. But for them, they really can have a ton of calories and they get to have foods that are delicious. But for them, it could be like they want to have pizza, or they want to have something fried. They want to have something, maybe they don't normally eat dairy and they want to have dairy. And so depending on when it's at, like for instance, with Deontay, he didn't have any dairy. So the first thing he wanted was a pizza afterwards. Now, when we're going towards a fight and that end goal, then it's just eye on the prize, right? So it's no dairy. We're not having any cheats in this with dairy because we know it's going to be inflammatory and it's going to take away from stuff. Now, if it's something that's like a season and we're thinking of like NBA or NFL, and then maybe on a weekend, if it's like a bye week, or if it's in between, like maybe on like a Monday, if they have a Sunday game coming up, we could do something like that. Also, I have one guy who loves Snickers. So I'm like, yeah, just do Snickers once. I don't care. You're burning so many calories. I'm not going to tell you can't have a Snickers once a week, but I don't want you sitting there eating 3 bags of potato chips every night. So everyone's different. It's low hanging fruit. And it's really assessing what is a cheat for them,
Well, we touched a little bit on this a couple times so far in the show, but not only do you work with some of the world's top athletes, but you also work with what you call on your website, the active population. So what's the biggest difference in how you do your job and how you run your programs working with the active population compared to the top athletes that you work with?
Sure. So I kind of mentioned it in here. We get to eat so many more, pro athletes get to eat so many more calories. So I'm dealing with general population, and I always say like, you're a 4 or 5 day a week gym goer who wants to see better results in their body. And part of that is because their nutrition needs to really be dialed in. So it is a lot more of precise portion sizes. I'll have my general population athletes like track their food, and I'll see what they're eating, and I'll look at their exact calories. Where my pro athletes, it's more of an estimate or a minimum range we want to hit. A lot of them do have chefs working with them, but they're not sitting there, figuring it out to the exact calorie and the exact weight. It's kind of like, here's the portion sizes that we need. Where general population, they want really good results and they want to drop weight, and we have to figure it out because I'm also teaching them. And my pro athletes, they don't necessarily want to sit there and learn. To be honest with you, it's like, if they want to, I'm happy to teach them, but a lot of them are just kind of going through the motions. Yeah. Where other people want to learn, like they want to, after their time with me, they want to know how to eat and how to make decisions on their own. And if they have an event or a party, or if they're going on vacation, what should they be eating and what should they be choosing? So it's a little bit different in that sense.
Do you have an app that you and your clients use to kind of track their progress or their intake or anything of that nature?
I'm very old school. I don't have my own app. I've been using MyFitnessPal for years, and it works well enough. It gets the job done. It teaches them how to track their calories. I know some people like Chronometer. I'm personally stuck with MyFitnessPal because I've got 10 years of recipes in there, and I'm not ever not transfer all that data. And it has a ton of data in it, because it's user entered data. So there's so many foods in there, and the barcode scanner, it's just easy. It's easy to use, so I just stick with that. It's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree.
And eventually, even with them, I don't want people to have to track their food the rest of their life. So it's really a lesson in understanding the value behind your food. And eventually we taper off of having to log their food.
So many of your expertise, and you're a jack of all trades. You work on autoimmunity, gut health, hormone balance, stress, sleep regulation. What are some signs of gut health issues that you've noticed with clients that some people may not realize stem from gut health issues?
Yeah. So when you have inflammation in your gut, we know that that can even affect your lung capacity. It's uncomfortable, right? So this is the number one thing. People come to me and they have been living with problems with their gut and their digestion that they just think is normal. They're like, oh, well, it's normal. It is not normal to be uncomfortable. It is not normal to have gas every time you eat food. It is not normal to maybe not have a bowel movement once a day, or maybe go to the bathroom all day. It's not normal to be uncomfortable after you eat, or to have heartburn all the time. And people just think like, oh yeah, I have heartburn all day. And it's like, no, that's not normal. And so we see, well, what are the foods that are causing that? And a lot of times we can find that food without even having to do testing. And their quality of life is so much better. Just think about if you're constantly bloated or you have pains in your stomach, how are you performing ideally? How are you even going through your day ideally? But a lot of it comes from our gut health affects every part of our body too, right? Now we're learning more and more that our microbiome is really affecting every single, from our skin, right? So people may have a lot of, even athletes or non-athletes that are active, acne is a huge thing. And that's coming systemically. It's not just because you're sweating, but it's what's coming out of your pores, right? From your organs. So that's a big thing that we correct.
Are there some tips you have for somebody that they realize right now, all the things that you said, they're like, oh crap, I guess I don't have a healthy gut, and starting the new year, I kind of want to get on top of that. Do you have any tips on starting a journey for a healthier gut?
Yeah. So what I always tell people is, people always want to do these sensitivity testing things, and that's the biggest waste of money. And we know that the science behind it's not that strong. The best thing to do is what we kind of call an elimination diet, and take out the trigger foods. And you can easily Google elimination and start with that as your base. And then we reintroduce foods every 3 days. And there's your basic foods like your dairy, eggs, gluten, foods. First of all, ask yourself, when I eat, what seems to bother me the most, right? Even if you have to write it down and then put a check next to it and then see what's the commonalities. Every time I have chocolate, I have heartburn. Okay, you know that. Or every time I have cheese, I feel my stomach hurts. So you could try to figure out the food that way, or you could do the elimination where we reintroduce foods every 3 days. If for 3 days, say I put eggs in and I don't have any problems, then I go to the next food. Then I'll reintroduce dairy. And if I don't have any problems with that, then I can reintroduce gluten. And those are good ways to kind of get to the bottom of it and be your own health detective.
Interesting. And so for those looking to diet and start eating cleaner for the new year, do you have any tips or tricks for those that just don't know how to start with meal prepping, or to figure out what foods to begin with?
Yeah. So I don't like to tell people that any foods are inherently bad. I mean, obviously higher calorie foods, if you're trying to lose weight, we want to also always stay away from inflammatory foods like fried foods, packaged foods, seed oils and things like that. But it's really figure out number one thing is, if you want to lose weight, you have to figure out how many calories you need to be eating a day. Because yes, there's two sides to it. Do you want to lose weight, or do you want to get overall healthy, or do you want to do both together, right? So we always look at doing low anti-inflammatory diet. You probably hear a lot about that. And so we do lean meats and fatty fishes, avocados, nuts, whole grains. It's for everybody, it's different. So what is that low-hanging fruit that you can change in your daily day? Are you somebody who's going to Starbucks every morning and getting a 400 calorie coffee with sugar? Take that out. Start with that. Substitute that. Everyone's got their vice, and you kind of want to start there. Do you order lunch every day, delivery from somewhere? How can we improve that?
Mhm. A lot of people, including myself, one of the biggest things in the beginning of my fitness journey that was really hard was finding meals that I can create. That I'm not the best cook in the world, to be honest with you. So finding stuff that was healthy, easy to make. Do you have any suggestions of food that someone could start off with? Someone that isn't the best cook, that may be on a smaller budget, of things that they could start eating to, start helping on their diet fitness journey?
That's me. I always say I'm the worst chef in the world. I just eat because I need to, and I don't have time. I have to batch cook everything. So what I did, even when I lived in New York, I found that going to Costco was worth it, so much more worth it money-wise. I would do a delivery like once a month. Trader Joe's is your best friend. Not just is it cheaper, but they have so many foods that you just throw into the microwave. But it's really batch cooking, and it doesn't have to be difficult. Get yourself a big thing of chicken and marinate it and throw it. Air fryer is also your best friend. And so you can either bake it or throw it in the air fryer and make enough for a few days. So Sunday, make enough until Wednesday, and then Wednesday for a few days. And so you can make, a ton of rice or tons of potatoes, mashed potatoes, and some vegetables. Just keep it simple and kind of go to your staple foods. I'm not saying that everything has to just be plain, but the reality of it is that's a lot easier. Some people like to get creative. Some people love cooking and they want to put 3,000 ingredients in. That's fine, but it takes a lot of time and it costs a lot to stock all these ingredients too. Yeah. Frozen vegetables are just as healthy as fresh vegetables, if not sometimes healthier, because they're flash frozen as soon as they're picked, so they don't lose their nutrients sitting on a shelf. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Trader Joe's I love because they have tons of frozen meals and vegetables and rice, and everything there is really, it makes things a lot easier.
Now, I've read some things online saying that microwavable foods aren't the best because the microwave takes away from the nutrients. Is there any truth behind that?
Not really. No, there's no science behind that. I actually need to I have a blog post I started on that. There's these microwave crazy people that say the microwaves can affect you, but that's not true at all. And actually it's a lot healthier because, when you boil vegetables or food, you lose the nutrients in the water, but microwaving actually preserves all of the nutrients in it. It's actually one of the ways to keep most of your nutrients in your food.
Wow, I would have never known that. Again, it's the internet that you can write anything you want, and enough people write about it, people can start believing it.
Drives me crazy. I always say this. There's so many things that I read and I'm like, oh my God, this is so not true. But, Joe Smith from Testosterone Nation keeps saying it. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, you've given so many amazing tips, and I don't want you giving away all your secrets. For people that may be listening that are interested in maybe booking you for some of your services, how can somebody go about booking you, possibly for a consultation or for long-term working together?
So my website you could do a discovery call with me on there. It's Athleats Nutrition, but it's spelled ATHLEATS, like eats, Athleats Nutrition. And then also on my Instagram, I try to put out a ton of educational information. I try to put a lot of time and effort into what I'm putting out there. So I always tell people to go to my Instagram because you can learn from that too. And then in my link in my Instagram, which is also Athleats Nutrition, you can find out more about me and you can book a discovery call with me and learn along the way.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I like to do like little segments with everyone that comes on the show. So I created this one specifically for you, and I call it Fact or Crap. So pretty much I took a bunch of different statements that I found online of like popular questions based on fitness and nutrition. And I want you to explain whether the statement that I say is fact or crap, and explain why or why not.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So the first statement: calories in, calories out is all that matters when it comes to weight loss.
Ooh, this is a tough one. Calories do really matter. There is a small thing down the road. Hormones, like thyroid hormones, more importantly, can really affect things as well. But for 90% of the population, yes, not so much calories in, calories out, but the amount of calories that you're eating do matter. Yes.
Awesome. Next statement: high-fat foods are completely unhealthy.
That's not true at all. There's a lot of high-fat foods that are really high in nutrients, and fats actually are the backbone of our hormones. So we want to stay away from saturated fats more than anything, but plant-based fats, avocados are amazing. So it's the high-fat fried foods and processed foods. But when we think about actual whole foods, it's not necessarily the case. Like think about nuts. They're amazing. They're great for you.
Okay, awesome. Next one. This one is going to be an interesting one. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
I am a firm believer in this, and there's a lot of reasons why. One of the things is that it has to do with cortisol. So when we wake up, our cortisol is high, which is our stress hormone. That's natural. We want it to rise. And eating can help lower our cortisol back down, but it also fuels our brain. And our brain needs carbohydrates and needs food to run, but also protein. When we're sleeping, our body is repairing and it's in the state of metabolic demand. So by the time we get up in the morning, we're probably low on our carbohydrates and our protein. So we want to have a high protein breakfast, and it really just starts our day better. And we find some research has shown that when people skip breakfast, they're snacking a lot more and eating a lot more later in the day. Your body's really smart and your brain's smart, and it's going to eat probably the same amount of calories even if you skip breakfast. So you're really doing yourself a disservice hormonally with your brain, getting yourself going, and it could cause more snacking.
Is it true that it's better to eat in the morning, just because if you say have a high calorie intake of breakfast in the morning, at least you have the rest of the day to burn it off? Is there any truth to that?
Well, it all depends. So it also depends when you're training, right? When you're working out. Yeah, you do have the rest of the day to burn it off, but you still need to eat again the rest of the day. So you're going to be putting more calories on that as well. But if you're working out in the morning, you definitely need a big breakfast in the morning. Now, typical people, and this doesn't really apply to athletes, and it really doesn't apply to active population. We are more sensitive to carbohydrates in the morning. We do burn carbohydrates better in the morning. But if you're somebody who's going to go work out at 7 p.m., now that's out the door. So for your sedentary person, it is better to kind of front load things. But like I said, I look at things of, we really need to fuel and recover our workouts, even for general population. So in that case, we want to balance things out and make sure that we have, if we're training later in the day. But if you're training in the morning, you might want to have a heavier breakfast, and your next meal after your training is probably your bigger meals.
Okay, awesome. Next statement. You need to eat small, frequent meals for optimal health.
Not really. No, we know that it does not increase your metabolism at all. What we do want to have is good doses of protein throughout the day to keep our muscle protein synthesis going. And the other thing is we want to eliminate snacking. So I'd rather see people doing like 4 meals a day than snacking. And when we talk about health, our gut health, it takes about like 3 hours for our stomach muscles after eating to like restart. It's called peristalsis, and to start kind of pumping again and start digestion again. So if we're constantly grazing, we don't really give our digestive tract that time to like stop and restart. So for health reasons, and also just because we know that people will consume more calories if they're snacking rather than eating meals.
Awesome. Next one, low fat and diet foods or healthy alternatives?
Definitely not. Low fat foods are usually higher in sugar. Now it all depends. There's this big diet soda debate that's out there. I personally am a proponent of diet soda. I mean, to me, if you're going to have a 240 calorie, 60 grams of sugar or a diet soda, have a diet soda. I don't think you should be drinking that all day long, but if you want a diet soda and that's something that makes you happy once in a while, go for it. But when it comes to low fat alternatives, that also depends too what we're talking about. I like low fat mayonnaise over regular mayonnaise, but I'm not going to tell you to go do like low fat cookies because they're probably going to be tons of sugar in them. So it really depends.
Next statement, supplements are just a waste of money.
That's definitely not true. The one thing to keep in mind is the word supplement. It supplements your diet. So it shouldn't be instead of your diet. It should be in addition to. And they're definitely not a waste of money, but the quality of supplements really matters. So a lot of times, like, we don't want to buy off Amazon because we don't even know if they're the actual name brand. And CVS in drugstores are not the best quality either. You're better off, let's just say there's a B vitamin and it's $10 at CVS, or if you get it through like a healthcare practitioner, it's $20. You're better off getting it through them because it's going to be the best quality and best bioavailability of that nutrient. And you could be paying $10 and it doesn't even do anything. Your body can't absorb it. Or you're paying $20 and it's actually going to work. So there is a lot to think about when you're getting your supplements, like the quality, but supplements are a necessity, I believe, especially for active people, because we can only get in so many nutrients, antioxidants, and from food. Our body has such a higher demand than your average person that we actually do need supplements to make up for it.
Do you have any supplements that you suggest people that are living an active lifestyle should always be taking or should have quite often?
I have a couple. I'm a big fan of creatine. I love magnesium for active people. Magnesium at night kind of helps calm. It's very calming and it helps with muscle. It helps with muscle recovery. What's another one that I like? Vitamin D is a very popular one. I would say make sure you need it first, but it seems like a lot of people do need it. And antioxidants, like I always tell people, if you want to do like a multivitamin with the antioxidant, that's always smart if you're active. But I would say my like good old standbys are collagen. Did I say collagen? No, I didn't.
No.
Collagen peptides, because that's soft tissue. Collagen peptides, creatine, magnesium. And then I feel like vitamin D, if you need it, but a lot of athletes do need it.
Amazing. Everyone can benefit from a probiotic.
So we know a lot about probiotics, and we're starting to learn a lot more, and it's changing over the years. Not everybody needs a probiotic all the time. And now we're learning about like different strands of probiotics. So it depends on which probiotic do you need. So not everybody necessarily needs a probiotic. A lot of people's gut health is off. And I would say that I've never met somebody who's taking a probiotic and it harmed them per se, unless they had maybe a SIBO or something like that going on. And a lot of women should take probiotics for women's health, but I don't feel like everybody needs to be on one. I also, like I said, I've never seen anyone be harmed by it per se.
Yeah, but I guess everyone's body type's different, just like how you talk about on your website, that everyone's tailored to whatever their anatomy, what they need most.
Yeah, and the probiotic strands can actually, there's even like, I have a guidebook that I'll look up on my phone where I'll put in a symptom or a sickness, something, and it will tell me which probiotics target that. So every probiotic strand actually kind of targets something different.
Science is absolutely crazy. I am learning so much from you right now that I never knew of, and you're still learning yourself, which is even crazier.
Always. Yeah, there's always stuff to learn about. I mean, I spend my time on the weekends reading PubMed. There's new studies coming out. Nutrition is so new. It's such a new field of research that we're going to learn so much more. I mean, even since I finished grad school, 5 years ago, we've learned so much more. And like I said, with gut health and probiotics, every day there's new discoveries coming out. And when you have to do research on human beings, things change.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about this earlier, about how people can just post anything online, and Joe Schmo, just because he has a few million followers, just because he says it, that means that it's true. Do you have any publications, anything that someone that may be interested to learn more about nutrition, fitness, health, any reliable resources they can go to themselves?
I mean, I personally do PubMed searches, but not everybody can read research. The ISSN, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, has their position stances, is what they call. And you can find that, like their position stance on protein, on nutrient timing, on creatine, things like that. Examine.com is a great science-based resource. They talk a lot about supplements on there. And then for strength and conditioning, I mean, I've always been a member of the NSCA just to have access to their Journal of Strength and Conditioning, which always has good, fun research that comes out. But a lot of stuff is free nowadays too. You can just do a PubMed search and find things out.
Perfect. Next statement. Tracking calories and macros is necessary for weight loss.
It is. It really is. I mean, the truth of the matter is, I tell people, if you really want to lose weight, you need to know how many calories you're eating. You do. People try to do it without it, and eventually they'll come back around and be like, all right, I need to figure it out. I need to understand how much is going to my body, because listen, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is technically like 28 grams, but if it's heaping, that could be 48 grams. And now we're talking about 200 calorie difference every serving size. 3 ounces of meat or 6 ounces of meat. I always tell people, every once in a while, get your scale out and like test yourself, see if you're really on point with things. So it really is important, because at the end of the day, the number, that's what's going to decide if you gain or lose weight.
Next statement. Carbs only make you gain weight.
No, that's so false. Carbs do not make you fat. It's calories that make you gain weight. And when people lose weight because they took carbs out, it's just because they took calories out. So carbs do not make you gain weight. And if you have an active lifestyle, they are a necessity.
All right. And last but not least, going vegetarian or going vegan will help you lose weight and be healthier.
Definitely not true either. A lot of people are vegetarians and vegans, and they're not getting in enough nutrients at all. And they're eating a ton of fried processed foods, and it's disgusting. And I don't even know how they're doing it. If you really sit down and put the time into it, or hire a professional and understand to get in all the nutrients and using whole foods, you're making your own foods, it could possibly be, and healthier is subjective. I mean, how were you eating before? I mean, were you eating McDonald's every day? Yes, then it's going to be healthier, but not if you're still going to a food truck just to get fried vegan food. Yeah. So it's subjective. But I don't think that could be a blanket statement at all. And a lot of times what we call like French fry vegans are people who think they're healthy and they're just eating fried processed foods all day.
That is very well said. So Jaclyn, thank you so much for coming on the show. If there's anything that you'd like to plug, including your services, I know you plugged your Instagram before. If there's anywhere else we could find you, this is the time to shout it out.
Okay. I know I'm primarily on Instagram. Like that's my number one thing. I unfortunately don't have time to be like everywhere. So it really is my Instagram, my website. I work with, so about 50% pro athletes and the rest are active general population. So, people that are active, they want to get a better body, or if you have like underlying gut health, hormone problems, maybe change of life, maybe you just had a couple kids and now you want to focus on yourself. That's kind of what I'm here for. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Jaclyn. Would love to have you back on the show in the middle of the new year. Maybe we could do like an Instagram live where people can ask you questions live and just do something like that where we can have more of an in-depth discussion. Because
that would be great. Yeah, I know viewers usually have their own questions, so it'd be great to do it live. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and we will talk soon.
Thanks.